I think it's time for a positive Game Chasers video because that is what we all need right now. And I know all of us out there, fans that have watched the series, whether you met the Chasers in person or not, all have some reason for why we watched. And in the long run, in the grand scheme of things, the aftermath of having watched said channel on YouTube and following them on Twitter and following them on the internet and seeing their adventures for the last like 15, 14 some odd years, they have inspired us in some way, shape, or form. And I definitely feel they've inspired me, which is why I'm making this video of how did the Game Chasers inspire me. Um, and it's probably not even just game collecting, but just like YouTube in general, social media in general, online presence in general. A lot of it is game collecting. A lot of it is stuff like that, which is what I'm going to be getting to in a second. But I'd say it. Some people got inspired by them because of Billy's his movie making, his like the way he and Melvor and all that edited videos, and the channel was done and stuff like that, and that inspired them because a lot of channels did probably the same thing. A lot of people online did the same thing after them, even if it wasn't retro game hunting. It was something in the same veins of like that, which a lot of the whole retro game hunting is based off like going to like storages and getting all this like there's a lot of shows over the years that people have collecting old antique things and retro things and whatnot. So that isn't like something the Game Chasers specifically created. They just did it for what they did on YouTube. And there's people that have followed their way after their channel and whatnot, or so on and so forth. But yeah, or got them into creating videos for YouTube and making like designs or something. Getting into drawing. Billy's drawing, his art probably inspired someone to draw. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. I think that's kind of cool. But there's like a lot of things: art, drawing, video making, game collecting, interview type stuff, designs. I'm sure the Game Chasers have inspired a lot of people for a lot of things. But the retro game hunting thing, especially, was something that I feel affected me a lot. The Game Chasers started, around 2011-ish, 2010-ish kind of range. I didn't get into them. I know on the video I did for Billy, I said about 2011. I feel it was early 2012 because I know the first thing I ever seen from the Game Chasers was the Christmas special. The first Christmas special when all the people were at the house and whatnot, and them trying to go get games and whatnot, and Eric was Santa. That was the first time I know for a fact in my brain that that's the first time I saw them. But that came out on Christmas of 2011, so I had to have seen it probably January, February 2012 or something like that. But since watching that series, it did, I would say, get me into more of a retro style game hunting, because prior to the Game Chasers, me starting to watch the Game Chasers, I wasn't doing that as much. I was still essentially buying older games here and there, but I wasn't going like super out of my way to do it. And it was mostly like 6th generation systems, because in like 2011, when I started watching the Game Chasers, like very start of it, I would have had the newest system I would have been like the 3DS. I was a ways away from having like a PS3 because I got the PS3 super late, and then the Wii U, PS4, Switch, and all that stuff afterwards. So I pretty much, my newest system was the 3DS, and then having the DS and the Wii and stuff like that, and playing like 360 with my cousins and friends and whatnot. So I wasn't super caught up on every single newer system during like the 7th generation, going into the 8th generation. But I was still collecting like PS2 games, GameCube games, Game Boy Advance games, and stuff like that here and there. Not like going out of my way to buy them, but if I saw them at a store, I would do so to buy them. But a year prior, about a year prior, like I said, I got around 2012. But in 2010, I got myself a new Super Nintendo. Like, I got rid of my Super Nintendo back around like 2004-ish at like Blockbuster. I was wanting to trade in stuff and get money so I can get myself an OG Xbox, which I got late into that too. But I wanted to get an OG Xbox. My mom was like, and she was looking at my Super Nintendo like, you hardly ever play this thing. You should sell it, get rid of it. Which I took all my childhood games that I grew up with my cousin, and the system itself, the controllers, all that stuff. Let me move this so you don't see my hand off to the side. And I took it up to Blockbuster and I traded it in so I can get some credit to go towards an Xbox. And what they didn't take, there was a customer that was behind us that bought the rest of the stuff off of us. I'm sure he undercut us somehow. He got lucky. He got some really good games because my collection of Super Nintendo games back in the day that my cousin and I had, um, it was like 30-ish something games verging on 40. We had a lot of games. A lot of games I'm still trying to get to this day with my new collection. And I'll get to that in a second. But yes, I traded the Blockbuster. What they didn't take, this guy that was obviously seeing some woman and her kid that, oh, I could give them this much money and get all this stuff. And we probably could have got a lot more for it. But yeah, we got money, and that money went towards me getting an Xbox. But yeah, that was my second Super Nintendo in my original collection. If you're wondering why I said second, my original Super Nintendo was destroyed by orange juice from my cousin. So obviously my mom and cousin and whatnot had to buy a backup Super Nintendo back in the day because, well, to replace it. So the first one was destroyed. The second one I sold. I got rid of my game collection, and that was like 2004 going into 2010. Didn't have it. I did regret getting rid of the Super Nintendo after the fact, especially given that the OG Xbox isn't a bad system. I like the OG Xbox a lot, but I did kind of fall out of it years later, and I sold it to a different cousin. And I wish I kept my Super Nintendo. I really do, and all that stuff. It was just it was not regret per se, but it was I should have done this, and I could have found a different way to get an Xbox or whatnot. But yeah, I had no Super Nintendo. My collection was gone. In 2010, a neighbor that we used to have and used to live by, we went over to visit her house, and I seen clear as day on their TV a Super Nintendo, and I'm like all intrigued. I'm like, oh my god, you have a Super Nintendo? And then she's like, do you want it? And I'm like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, take it. We'll get the collection. We'll get all the games of it. We'll bring it over later. And I'm like, cool. And she's like, oh yeah, it works and everything. And I took it to the house. I waited, I think, to the next day to get their games. I got the controllers and about 15 or so games. And that right there is where I started a new Super Nintendo collection. My third Super Nintendo with a new Super Nintendo collection. And I got a couple games extra after that. I bought Saturday Night Slam Masters and Sunset Riders because one of them I rented Saturday Night Slam Masters back in the day, and Sunset Riders is one of my favorite games on Super Nintendo. So, with that being said, I ended up getting that. I had her collection. I got Aladdin from like Gibraltar. If you don't know what a Gibraltar is, it's like it's a trade show. I'm sure some type of Gibraltar exists in other states. I got that because that was the game I used to own too. And I was starting to buy a couple games, but I wasn't doing it like religiously. I wasn't doing it consistently. I had a small Super Nintendo collection that was off to the side. And cool, I got a Super Nintendo back, and I got a little collection of games. And in the group of games that she had like one like Art of Fighting, Super R-Type, Donkey Kong Country, Booger Man. What else did I get from her? Lion King, Toy Story. I'm forgetting some of the other games I got. But yeah, I got a bunch of games from her. Most of which I don't have anymore. I did keep some of them, but I got rid of others. But yeah, then that was my little collection at the time at about 2010-ish. This was like summer 2010 going into the fall. I got that, and I started building up. I got a couple games, but I didn't like buy anything really like that much at the time in 2010 and early 2011. But it was sitting there, and I was enjoying it here and there. And I'm like thinking about getting games, but not to the point of like I am now, or it was like the last like decade or whatever. Then the Game Chasers came around. I came across their channel. I came across the Christmas special. I came across the videos, and I distinctly can remember the time frame ish that I would have came across the Game Chasers channel because at the time, one of my other cousins, totally unrelated to the original cousin that used to live with us and I grew up with a collection with, it was in fact the one I sold the Xbox to. This was around the time he was going into high school, and he would always come over and bring stacks of homework. Stacks stacks of homework. This big of homework. Oh, can you help me? Because his mom wanted us to help him, like, do better at school and so on and so forth. Not going to go into that. But, my mom and I were to help him, and he would always bring over his Xbox 360, and we'd play video games while also trying to do his homework and so on and so forth. At a time where I'm also in college and have my own homework and work and classwork and stuff that I have to be worried about. So I was also stressed from that, having to help him do this and that. And one of the relaxation luxury points I came across was finding the Game Chasers, and this was like a year-ish after they officially started, because they started in, I think, early 2011 officially, I think. So I went back on their episodes, and then it's been that way ever since, playing catch-up and trying to watch episodes I missed or whatnot. But really getting into it, and like I mentioned with the Billy video, it wasn't just the video game thing. It was like, it's the camaraderie, it's the brothership, it's the fact that they all felt real. Like, you can easily see if someone's putting on a character and being disingenuous and fake. And I never got that from the Game Chasers, like, at all. Like, it literally feels like they act like that, and their personalities are pretty much like that, and the way they bounce off each other positively and negatively. Melvor, Dodongo, Billy, J, Tim, Chris, and all that stuff. And the people they interacted with over the years, it felt genuine. It wasn't just the video game collecting, but it was everything else that went into it. But the video games, like, seeing channels dedicated to video games was a major click for me. That's why I really got into, like, the likes of, like, Angry Video Game Nerd and Alpha Omega Sin, Metal Jesus, and so on and so forth, leading the Game Chasers, Game Grumps, Pro Jared, 8-Bit Eric, all these people, Retro Life, and over the years, obviously, and like, some are better than others, some are higher than others, some are more genuine than others, but seeing all the different video game channels that blew up, especially in the 2010s, the Game Chasers pretty much above all, beside, right alongside like Angry Video Game Nerd, were like definitely something I really look forward to. And I got into Angry Video Game Nerd back in like high school, so yeah. Which shows how long he's been around. But yes, I was watching the Game Chasers, and I was getting into them collecting stuff. And I slowly am like, I should go and try to find my local game stores, my local places. And I started collecting games. I had a Super Nintendo. I wanted to start really buying games for it. I still had my N64 and my PS2 and my GameCube, the Game Boy Advance and whatnot. I can go buy games for those. I was still getting like games for the Wii, and eventually I had a PS3. I was getting games for the DS still, getting 3DS games, so I was getting new and older games, and I was looking around for deals and looking around and seeing just how many different game stores we had around, different places we had that I could buy this stuff from. And there's a lot of games I got some. I was one situation, and later on at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about, and it's in my name of my video, but I'm going to talk about the one time I got, caught slipping, my own caught slipping moment, which is more just me being stupid. But I'm going to talk about that in a second. But one of the best pickups I ever had in my life, and it's such a rare find, not a rare find, but like, you hardly ever see that, especially for prices like that nowadays. I was at a Value World, which is like, no, it wasn't Value World. It was the Salvation Army. It was a Salvation Army, and they had Super Nintendo copies, $5 each. Mickey's Magic Quest starring Mickey Mouse, Mega Man X, Mega Man 7, and Mega Man Soccer. I made sure to buy all 4 of those. It was $20. Some of those games would be like going for 30, 40, 50 bucks nowadays. That was probably one of the biggest finds I found. But yes, I found those games and a lot of other Super Nintendo games, especially. I especially was going for Super Nintendo games, especially. Again, I'm going to get into a second on what I really wanted to do with that. But I was buying, there was game stores that my cousins went to, and I was able to go there, find some Super Nintendo games, GameCube, PS2, PS1, stuff like that. I ended up getting, eventually, from a store that used to be around us called Play and Trade, I got a Retron 3, so I can get some NES games and some Sega Genesis games. I have like a 10 game collection of NES games to this day, and about 6 to 8 Sega Genesis games. 2 of them complete in box, Sonic 2 and NBA Jam Tournament Edition. From said play and trade, one of the biggest finds I found for a pretty good deal was TMNT Turtles in Time. I got for about 30 something bucks. It was going for 40 something, and they were having a sale at the time where I was a member already, so I got a discount. But then, if you can prove that you liked their Facebook page, you get even more of a discount. And I'm like, this is my way of getting that into my collection, which I think I rented that back in the day, but I never owned it. But it's cool nowadays to say I own Turtles in Time, an original actual cartridge, not like the Cowabunga collection now, which I also own. And there was just a lot of different finds from the PS2 and the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance to the DS to the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, NES that I got over the years. It became a big thing after watching like Game Chasers, watching Nightwing, watching Pro Jared, watching Angry Video Game Nerd, watching all these YouTube channels over the years that dedicated their entire existence to talking about retro gaming and whatnot. And that's what really got me into it. Like, I was doing stuff before the Game Chasers and whatnot, but I didn't really get into it until the 2010s, until really watching them. And I made it a goal to start collecting, games that I used to own, games that I rented, games that I've never played before. I tried to, balance it out and get a lot of different experiences of stuff that I've always wanted to try out and find, and not have to rely on, the Wii Virtual Console, all the digital game stores, and third party whatever. And that's basically the one thing I got. But one goal that I made for myself, and this is pretty much where the inspiration of the Game Chasers really kind of dived into, and I'm sure I've mentioned in the comments of their videos before. I definitely mentioned in like live streams for like Billy or Jay, or I think 8-Bit Eric at least. I mentioned this before, like my goal right now, and this goes back to the whole Super Nintendo thing, which I got prior to watching the Game Chasers. One goal I want to do, and I could do it for other systems too, but the one goal I've been wanting to do is to actually rebuild my childhood Super Nintendo collection. That's the one thing I've been wanting to do for years, and since I started, now it's like 15 years later after the Game Chasers, I'm still in the middle of that because some games just are so damn expensive. But I have rebuilt most of my Super Nintendo collection. I obviously bought a bunch of games I either rented back in the day or never even played whatsoever. But I've been wanting to rebuild my collection that my cousin and I used to have at our old house when I was younger back in the 90s. And I have about 14, 15-ish games left to go. Like, I've found a bunch of them. I've gotten, like I said, Aladdin back. I've got Sunset Riders. I ended up getting Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Super Battleship, Rival Turf, Mario World, F-Zero, Donkey Kong Country, Jurassic Park, Lion King, a lot of games like that. But there are games out there that I'm still trying to get. I need to get Mario All-Stars again. Just having the collection on the Wii is cool and all for their 25th anniversary, but I want the actual physical cartridge because we used to own that. The one without World, but yeah. OG Street Fighter 2, not Turbo, not special new fighters, whatever. Original, slow, basic Street Fighter 2. I can get all the other versions after. I need that one first. Super Widget, Super Alfred Chicken, the Inspector Gadget game, the Speed Racer game, Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool or whatever. The Barbie game, because my cousin had it, so I want to own it just because we both had it back in the day. The one where you have to go through it's like the walking along the path game, like the original Super Beauty model or whatever it's called, Supermodel. I need to get that just because she used to own it. I need to get it to get our complete collection. Toy Story, which is sad because I had that from my neighbor and got rid of it. What else am I missing? TMNT Tournament Fighters. I'm blank. Pack Attack. I'm blanking on it. But there are a few more than just those. It's about 14 to 15 games. But I've got most of my games back. And I've made that a goal. That is my major goal right now, is to rebuild my Super Nintendo collection that my cousin and I used to have back in the 90s. And I'm close. I'm closer now than I ever was. But some of those games can be pretty damn expensive, and you hardly can find some of them in certain places. So yeah, that is my current goal. And maybe eventually one day after I do that, I can go get all the old PlayStation 1 games I used to own, all the PS2 games I used to own, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, uh, other older systems, N64. But the Super Nintendo is the system, and it started right before the Game Chasers. Before I started watching the Game Chasers, and it's been my major goal in the last like 10 years. I didn't fully start up on that being my goal when I started watching Game Chasers, but after a few years, that became my goal since finishing like college and then going on to the work field and having money of my own, so I can actually do this. But yeah, that's my major inspiration was. It helped me get more into retro game collecting. It did help me want to do more of my YouTube channel too. Despite I'm not doing all the editing stuff like Billy, Melvor, and Eric and all that we're doing. I could do that if I had the software. I'm first off too lazy to go get it, and that has to be a dedicated thing for me to spend money on in order to get all that stuff. I used to do that stuff in college because I used the college computers for some of my old videos. If you look at my old videos, which were more clips and footage and highlight reels and tributes and music video type stuff, I was using After Effects. So I know how to use After Effects and Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff. I just don't have that on my well-being, like my computers, my anything in the house. So I could technically use that stuff if I really wanted to. But it has helped me want to do stuff with my video. They've inspired me to do stuff with my YouTube channel. They've inspired me to go game chasing. They inspired me to get creative and whatnot. I guess I could say Billy's art helped me want to draw more. Maybe. I mean, inspiration can come from a lot of things. So yeah, I think they've inspired me quite a lot. And I'm sure they've inspired a lot of you too. So that I want to do this video so we have something positive, some positive outlook on the After Effects, no pun intended, me just saying After Effects, and aftermath of, Game Chasers, watching Game Chasers currently, the years they've been around. And before I go, I wanted to mention the one time I was caught slipping, which this was early on in my going in game hunting thing. This was post watching the Game Chaser, so this obviously wasn't before. I was still in college, so this was about 2013-ish, 14-ish, because I graduated in 2015 out of college. We went to Value World, and they had a box of Super Nintendo, N64, bunch of games, like controllers, games, and whatnot. And the ones I can clear as day remember are Super Punch-Out and Final Fantasy 2/4. And I'm like, oh my god. And I tried to go through the box and start buying stuff. These people were like, no, the box has to be sold as is. Full box. The entire box. Now, what we should have done is I could have stayed there. My mom could have went home and got some money, because I don't know what they were asking for. They were probably asking like $100 or $80 or something for it. And I should have stayed there and be like, nope, this is mine. And myself nowadays would totally do something like that. I'm like, you're not taking this away from me. I'm waiting here until I can buy it. You're not taking this away. I was dumb. I was stupid. We left. We came back the next day. And it was gone. I'm like, damn it. That was me being stupid. That wasn't even just caught slipping. That was being retarded. That was being stupid. I should have stayed there and let my mom go home, get the money, which we had money on us. We just didn't have enough for whatever they were asking for, because I think it was like $100, $80, $90. And I could have bought it, and I could have had Punch-Out, Super Punch-Out, and Final Fantasy 2, and then some N64 games. I think there was N64 controllers, Super Nintendo controllers. There's probably a system in there or something. And I'm like, oh my god, I missed out so bad. That's my call it slipping moment. That was about 2013, 2014. And I've improved ever since. I've never let something like that ever happen to me again after that. And the small sliver of not redemption and not, rebuilding myself after that. Same Value World. I think it was sometime later, I was able to get for $5 a copy of Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo. So there is some silver lining there. Some. Just a little bit. So yeah, that's my caught slipping moment. That's my inspiration for the Game Chase from the Game Chasers. I thank you all for watching, and I thank you, Game Chasers, for the countless years of entertainment, all of you, and how you've inspired all of us to do a multitude of things in life. And for our hobbies or daily life or family or friends or whatever someone got inspired by, they got inspired by something. So I thank you. My name is Snipes is Fun. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to, and have a lovely day. See you all later.